So, these are SAMHSA data about the prevalence of substance dependence in the United States. Doesn't include nicotine. I apologize. It wasn't my decision. It was theirs. But you can see that we have over 8 million individuals with alcohol dependence, less than 9% of which have ever been given a prescription for one of the FDA-approved medications to treat alcohol dependence based on a nationwide pharmacy survey. Cannabis is the most widespread illicit drug dependence disorder, both in the US and around the world, and we have no FDA-approved treatments, none for cocaine. Heroin is well represented in terms of medication-assisted recovery, and no medications for the other substances represented in the SAMHSA survey. So, the medications that we focus on are those that act in the CNS, and the brain is in a very different state at the different points in the addiction cycle. And each of these present an opportunity for intervention with a potential medication, whether it's to interrupt the binge intoxication period, the acute withdrawal period, or, for lack of a better term, what we call the protracted withdrawal period. And this is a period that's of particular interest to me. It's when the stress systems in the brain become recruited, particularly the corticotropin releasing factor, which we call CRF. And clinically, we observe impaired sleep, dysregulated mood, anxiety, dysphoria, irritability. And any one of these factors, craving, of course, any one of these factors can be a precipitant for relapse. And the medications that we're interested in are those that help to restore balance in the stress and reward system during this period. So these are some figures that I pulled from Evaluate Pharma to give you an idea of how the medications are implemented. In addiction treatment, we've largely relied on two strategies, either an agonist replacement strategy or an antagonist blocking strategy. And what I would propose to you that might get more voting with their feet, which is what this slide really reflects, is how many treatment providers prescribe and how many patients actually fill the prescription, is if we thought more about partial agonists, where the high is blocked, but the protracted withdrawal symptoms involving sleep and mood and craving are modulated. And in fact, that's what you find with perhaps our main blockbuster, Suboxone, that really binds to the receptor so that you're really wasting your money by using heroin, but it allows enough of the medicinal effects of the opioid replacement so that you don't have those protracted withdrawal symptoms. And varenicline, much the same model for smoking cessation. And actually, even when you get down to the poor underutilized medications for alcohol dependence, you can see that acamprosate, which is more in the protracted withdrawal treatment domain, got more votes with the feet than naltrexone, which is one of those antagonists that block the endogenous opioid system, which is really a system that's only, part of the equation in alcohol dependence, which is quite a messy drug, not like having one receptor in the brain that we can do things to. So, taking what we know about the brain and addiction, there are three levels of players. I'm going to keep this very simple. Jack very eloquently addressed the nucleus accumbens story, the dopamine story, the rewarding effects of the abused drugs that, when they get over-abused, then result in a deficit state that keeps people locked into the pathological use patterns. I call that the lizard brain, that's quiescent, but always looking in the environment for, that opportunity to sex. And that's in the very basic primitive part of the brain. Mid-range is the extended amygdala, and this is the piece of the brain that's involved predominantly in that protracted withdrawal phenomena, where CRF is your major player. That's what's released in the stress state of early abstinence. And there are a whole lot of other players, but I'm hitting on the main ones. And then you have the prefrontal cortex, which is involved in your executive functions, which basically say, stop, do not use, or drive forward. And, the glutamate system is one of the players in craving in this system. So you can see how just looking at each of these different layers, it has certain implications for medication development. In terms of the binge intoxication stage, we have a lot of existing medications, but we also have a lot of potential, particularly in terms of the partial agonists that I mentioned, but also the drug vaccines that suck up the drug before it even gets into the CNS. And there's a lot of elegant work going on now for heroin, nicotine, cocaine, even methamphetamine, that shows promise in terms of a potential strategy for a medication-assisted recovery. In terms of the withdrawal negative affect phase, GABA modulators, CRF antagonists, and kappa opioid antagonists are all opportunities of interest in terms of targets. A problem that we have as being sort of a stepchild in terms of an area of interest for big pharma is that they just haven't been willing to give us the intriguing compounds. But we have a great opportunity now with the closing of so many CNS divisions like in Glaxo, Merck, et cetera, because they have CRF antagonists that they had developed for depression, anxiety disorders, the favored children for CNS indications that represent a real opportunity, low-hanging fruit perhaps, for developing for addictive disorders that I find quite exciting. And as proof of concept, our group has worked with gabapentin, which is an old off-patent drug consistent with Francis Collins' directive to look at old off-patent drugs as opportunities to meet large unmet clinical needs. And what Marissa Roberto and George Koop's lab has shown is that gabapentin normalizes that balance between CRF and GABA in the extended amygdala in rodent models of dependence. And we studied it first in a human laboratory model of addiction, and then in a clinical trial of alcohol dependence that will be published in the November 4th issue of JAMA Internal Medicine. And we studied it for marijuana dependence. Great proof of concept for this medication approach to protracted abstinence. And not only did gabapentin increase the rates of complete abstinence and the rates of not heavy use, but it also improved sleep, mood, and reduced craving. And this is a unique package of results. And I think it speaks strongly to looking at this system as a target for medication-assisted recovery. And many of the same drugs will also have benefits for the executive function to build up that stop response. It's not that any one system doesn't communicate with the others. So to conclude, substance abuse treatment has proven efficacy. The effect sizes for a camprosate for alcohol dependence is the number needed to treat of 8. That was also true for abstinence in gabapentin. The number needed to treat for naltrexone in alcohol dependence for no heavy drinking is 9, and it was 5 for gabapentin. These are excellent effect sizes. They're effective. They're cost effective. We know how expensive untreated addiction is. And it's an opportunity because of the parity that's being given for substance abuse treatment by third-party payers. So what I would propose is that we need to muscle in on identifying and preclinically validating novel targets and really get at repurposing available drugs and those shelved investigational drugs for other indications. Work on bringing the vaccines forward. Many at Scripps are developed by chemists, and how do you get them from the chemistry lab through an IND is another challenge. Use the human laboratory studies for proof of concept to reduce the failed large clinical trials, refine the outcomes that you look at in clinical trials, see if there's a signal before you have a disappointment. And most importantly is increase the addiction medicine training programs and fellowships to expand the network of potential prescribers so that these findings actually get implemented in recovery programs.